Welcome into this Playtech Brazil panel discussion. I am joined by some fantastic speakers.
Hey, thank you again for the invitation. My name is Hugo Baumgartner. I'm the Chief Business Officer of the group Sports Gaming Brazil, which we have 3 brands in Brazil, and happy to be here.
Hi, thank you very much for having me. I'm Charmaine Hogan. I'm Global Head of Government Relations at Playtech.
Olá, sou Renato Siqueira, diretor-presidente da Caixa Loterias.
Liliana Costa. I'm the manager for South America and Brazil for portfolio of Clarion Gaming, and I'll be supporting to Renato Siqueira from Caixa Lotteries in the ICE studio here.
Thank you all for introducing yourselves. Now, these first 2 questions are for Hugo and Charmaine. So up to you, who responds first? When Brazil launched regulated gambling in 25 in January, expectations were sky high. Do you feel the market is living up to expectations at the moment?
I'm happy to go first. As a short answer would be yes. As in any market, you can start and you're always trying to navigate those rules, making sure you are complying with the local rules. But I think in the case of Brazil, the expectation was even higher because it's a big market. It's a population which is massive. But we also found that as a supplier, we work with many operators. So, once you've navigated the rules for one provider, one operator, then you can easily roll it out to the others. And I think the other good point for the market launch was the regulatory authority. When you think it was pretty new and it had a lot to do in a short time frame, we found a regulator that is willing to listen to you and is very reachable. And I find that quite key on a market.
100% agree. I mean, we all are very happy with our first year of regulation. And something that was mentioned is that our government, our regulators, really they have done a really good job. We started January 1st. Of course, with a high-level regulation, which, to be honest, in my perspective, it was really, really good. So we can see that Brazil at the moment, and talking to friends all over the world, we have a very good regulation, and it gives us some something to last longer to have this regulation in Brazil at the moment.
And Hugo, looking back at that period, were there any growing pains licenses had to work through?
The process was not easy to get the license. Of course, I don't know if everybody's aware, but we have 3-4 different documents to be issued per provider, per game, RNG, RTP. I mean, everything has to be done in a short period for plenty of products. So we had a very good cooperation with our providers to support us with all those documents. It was tough, but it was really, really valuable for us to show the world that Brazil can do things well done.
And Charmaine, we've heard a lot about the threats of the illegal market in Brazil. How smoothly has the transition been from grey to regulated market? How's it actually be?
As smooth as it can be. I mean, I think as Hugo was saying, there was a lot of documents, a lot of requirements to navigate through in a short time. And as I said earlier, being a provider, you do it once, then you know what you need to do when the next operator comes along. But what I would also add is having worked as close as you can with authorities for a couple of years now, you know the direction of travel, so you can anticipate what they're expecting. So I think the market launched well. Can it do better? Yes. There's a lot of providers and operators who've invested a lot on the market, including Playtech. So of course you want the channeling rate of the legal market to be quite high. So I think there is room for improvement over there. And we encourage the authorities to make sure that you're allowing the legal operators to have a healthy competition on the legal market and not be competing with the illegal. So those are ongoing conversations. I think back to our point where the authorities know, they listen. It's more about helping with international best practices. This is what other markets are doing to improve their channeling rate. And this is what, in our view, is balance and improvements on the market between what's an efficient regulation and what would end up being over-regulation, because that will, just lead into the illegal market. And the whole purpose, by the way, authorities of regulating your market was to protect your local players, right? And that has got to remain key. So I think there's room for improvement. And again, the authorities want to improve on there.
So speaking of the regulatory framework, what elements have specifically worked well and which have been particularly hard to operationalize?
I'll start with the second part. So in the beginning, when you're trying to come onto the market and you're migrating players, the KYC was quite complex. I don't think it was intentional, but it was complex, but it's kind of was smoother as we went along. I would pick that. Otherwise, to be honest, as a provider, I think about content and technology, it worked well. Back to my previous point, because you can discuss with the authorities. So as long as you find a regulator who understands that, listen, players need to find a plethora of games on the market, for example, on the legal market, and the authorities are understanding that there's a bit an element of flexibility, speed, then it's okay. And on the responsible gambling side, I think they've done it really well. Now it's again about how to be sure that any improvements on that front remain well managed. For example, Brazil has not introduced quantitative restrictions, which is great. So you want to make sure that they don't suddenly say like, oh, we want to improve, and they go in that direction. So I think it's really going well. I mean, they issue what they call the regulatory agenda and allowing us to reply to that consultation, which is it's a positive sign, right? And everybody that can contribute to that. And so the regulator is, gathering all that information. So I think it's a positive.
And let's talk about the SPA. How has that performed in year one? And is it an effective partner for the industry? Whoever would like to take that.
100%. As Charmaine mentioned, that they are really, really helpful for us. Whatever we need from them, it's just make an appointment. They receive us, have the questions, the doubts, or even for a new idea or something that we think that should go in a different direction. As Charmaine said, different practice, what's been done all over the world. So I'm 100% sure that they did a very good job. Of course, regulation is a live thing, so it will be improvement over the years. But during 24 and 25, they did a very good job.
And Hugo, what's been the biggest competitive differentiator so far?
For Brazilian market,
Yeah.
The biggest differentiator, I think, I was talking with some friends yesterday, and I realized that we are in a very good position, in my perspective, that we have Pix. Brazil has this bank transfer tool in Brazil, which I think that for us, it's a plus for 3 reasons. Why? One, it's easier to cash out and cash in. Number 2, you can identify specifically who is making the deposits, and you have to make the cash out for the same bank account. And number 3, 100% of our deposits are, again, through Pix. There's no cash, there's no credit card. And then in the long term, illegal gambling is using Pix as well. So it's easier to identify those fintechs and those companies who are supporting Pix to the illegal gambling. So again, I always say that we just have 12 months of regulation. So we are on the right way to get there.
And have you seen any practices or tactics that regulators are likely to push back on?
No, I don't see that. I mean, I think that we are improving, but I don't see that they are doing anything on that direction.
And Charmaine, this question is for you. Let's talk responsible gambling. Do Brazilian consumers respond differently to responsible gambling tools compared to other regions, in your view?
I think you see many similarities when you go to a high-level baseline. We did a lot of conversations, call them like that, with the authorities across the years. And we run with our local partners, RG brand trend report, where we ask questions to players with a reputable partner. And you find that when they're talking about Do you want regulation to come in? What are your views? What do you look for with a legal operator? You see similarities in terms of trust. They want to feel they can trust the operator. They want to feel they can trust the regulator. They feel they want to feel safe when they're placing their bets. They want to know that their money is, the payment systems they're using are safe. The information, their data is safe. So you see those similarities. And I agree with you when you mentioned the centralized way that Brazil is operating, because the regulator gets a lot of data, actually. So they can see how the market is functioning, unlike some other markets. And I hope that will be used to good purposes. So the regulator can see where they can improve, so they can see the fluctuations even in player behavior, to be honest. So back to the responsible gambling part and what I was saying in terms of you can always improve, but improve in an efficient way. And the fact that they have all this centralized data really helps the regulators to go, I know exactly how the players are behaving on the market across operators. And I say, great, just make sure that you use that in a really efficient and sustainable and long-term view way.
And Hugo, how's the public trust in licensed operators evolved since the regulated market launch, do you think?
Well, after 12 months of regulation, I can see that there was a change. Before 24 and 25 are different. We have a very good manner of identifying the licensed ones, which is the bet.br. So they know the ones that has this URL are the regulated ones. So one, it's easier. They understand that, of course, they should play on the regulated environment. Unfortunately, we still have some illegal gambling, which they don't have KYC, they don't do all the onboarding process, which makes things easier for them. But again, I believe that doing this path will be a very good way for Brazil.
And to both of you, has regulation changed how the media and the wider public think about and talk about gambling?
No.
I was going to say, that's an interesting question.
Yes. No, unfortunately, no. I think that's part of our job, to educate. So what we are doing internally as a job and myself as a person, I like to always that I have the chance to talk with the media, to talk with journalists, talk with anyone who wants to learn a little bit about our industry. I'm happy to do so. Because unfortunately, we still have misunderstanding or people that really don't know what happens. They don't understand that we have different regulations with different licenses, with different approvals in different levels about the casino, about different products. So I'm really happy to and ask people to put me on this things in Brazil, because I think that's part of our job to do so.
And Charmaine, do you feel measures such as the ban of Bolsa Familia betting, efforts to tighten marketing rules, and are we potentially seeing a pushback against the regulated sector?
So you're always going to have a bit of tension when it comes to our sector. Some like it, some don't, which is why then you advocate for regulation, which is also why we say advertising does play a role. Back to your point about education, and probably we can improve on that front. You're right. Try to have more of an educational debate and use the media to inform more about what gambling is, but awareness of the products, awareness about the legal sides, but also about what more players have available on the legal side to keep themselves protected. The one thing I would say about Brazil actually is that unlike many other markets, it has a very high responsible gambling expectation outlined in the law. So I actually take that with to other markets. I'm like, hello Brazil, because you're setting that high bar, well done. And in terms of looking, isn't it, all types of consumers, all types of citizens on a market, I think it's important. And, the authorities will take their view on how they feel they need to better protect a segment of the population or not. And it's their right to do that. And they want to do it in a way that ultimately works. And I suppose the other key point I would add is that they want to make sure that what they're doing is genuinely protecting the vulnerable parts of the population, and that you don't end up there encouraging more on the illegal markets. So it's always about ultimately balancing what it is you're trying to do, what's the purpose of what you're rolling out. I think that's a key message I would leave. But in terms of advertising, I would say you need advertising on the market, but let's use it also to educate us.
And Renato, this is for you. Do you feel the social transfer taxes are being communicated and perceived by the public as a social benefit when compared to the unregulated market?
Em relação às loterias federais,
There's two ways to make a transition from the taxes to the society in Brazil, directly and indirectly. So directly is the case of the federal lottery, because of course, when they go straight to the public. Then you have the indirect side, which is, for example, sports betting, where you have different taxes and different institutions that receive that contribution. But into 2025, Caixa Lotteries, they passed directly $2.3 billion to society, that then of course goes to sports, culture, education, and many other lines. And they might be perceived a little bit different, Caixa Lotteries, because it goes from them directly into societies, injected into social causes, and reaches the public directly. So they might be perceived a little bit differently. And 1.8 billion also supports the sports. So if we look that it is because of Caixa Lotteries that they allow to make it happen, the Olympics and Paralympic sports Brazil being represented in the Olympics and Paralympics.
So this question's for Charmaine and Renato. From a responsible gambling standpoint, how are we observing consumer behavior as well as the actions taken by operators and regulators?
There's always room for improvement. I always say that. But I think the fact that, as I mentioned, the law earlier, and then you have, of course, the ensuing regulations, the bar was set at quite a high bar level from the start. So the operators and their providers had to come in knowing that that's the bar that's expected of you. So that's already a good start to the regulated markets. And as I said, the responsible gambling reports that we carried out over the last 3 years show that the players want to be protected. So they have followed that path, right? And in terms of what you offer in a consumer-facing website, the setting of the limits, helplines, now there is a centralized self-exclusion mechanism. I think that is working well. The part I said earlier was about make sure that improvements are well balanced, because enhancing responsible gambling, we know, is something that the regulator is consulting on, which we will support. But also back to my point around data, regulator, you have that data in front of you, use it to be sure that what you're rolling out is addressing those shortfalls, not kind of addressing something just for the sake of it. So I think for now, in my mind, the balance is there. Do more, the regulation has to keep improving. Look at the data. Operators, make sure that you are doing a bit more than what is kind of just check line, borderline compliance. I think that is on us as well. But otherwise, I think the balance is there.
And for Renato?
O novo marco da
They feel some difference since everything happened in Brazil. Responsible gaming has been always a highlight for Caixa Lotteries, and they have been doing it for many years, including the Caixa Lotteries is a level 3 heading to level 4 of WLA certification. So for them, it was always about protecting the player, and they've been working it for many years now. So responsible gaming for iGaming, for Caixa Lotteries, it became very important, because now you see other companies bringing new ideas, new things, and they are just wanting to become better and better. Caixa Lotteries, it's sports betting, iGaming regulation, just show it's more opportunities to get better, more opportunities for the player, more opportunities for Caixa, and to ultimately to always protect the player better and be a better market.
And for Renato again, has the fixed odds that's come through from the regulatory framework affected traditional lottery in Brazil?
Sim. Na verdade, eu vejo que a
Absolutely.
aposta esportiva,
The regulation
ela
of sports
que a
betting,
Caixa
it
Loteria,
did
através da
change
loteria
a
de
little
Brasil,
bit
é
the
o que ela
scenario
faz há
for
muito tempo.
Caixa because in
O
the
brasileiro
80s, in the late
tem,
80s,
eu acho
Caixa
que
used to have a
uma memória
game called
afetiva,
Little Zebra,
que na década de
which had a
80,
sportsbook
90 existia a
focus.
zebrinha,
And
que era as
that
apostas que
became
nós
interesting
fazíamos
because
através das
now they can
zebrinhas e
bring that
você
sports
tinha ali a
focus
zebra
again to
seria a
their
coluna do
games,
meio ali, ou então
and is being well received by the
aquele
public.
azarão,
But
aquele que
that was
chegava
something
para,
they
não
always
era
wished
o
for.
time escolhido, era o
So
azarão
regulation
daquela
brought
aposta.
that
Então, a aposta
sportsbook
esportiva
focus
já é
back,
algo intrínseco dentro
and
da,
you can
da
play
Caixa
it
Loteria e do seu
online. So if
negócio.
you go to the
E
website of
sim,
Caixa
eu acho
Lotteries,
que
and you can
a
play all of
regulamentação
these
trouxe
games.
novo
There's
foco.
the
Mudamos
Little
o
Zebra.
produto,
You
mas
can
temos um
play the
produto que tem sido
lottery.
biblioteca,
Also, some
um
lotteries,
produto de aposta
lottery games with a
esportiva
particular
dentro
focus
da
on
aposta de
sports
loteria
betting.
federal,
So it
onde o
revolutionized the
apostador ele
market,
vai até uma caixa
and
lotérica ou através
it's
do
going to be
nosso
become
site,
more
ele
and more
consegue fazer
interesting
todo o
with
seu
these
jogo
sportsbook
ali de aposta
floats.
esportiva.
So it's been well received, but what has the changes been in consumption behavior? And is there a difference between the original products versus the new products? Are there changes in consumption behavior?
São apostadores
Although there
diferentes
was,
que a
we
gente
felt the
entende. Eu
difference
acho
in
que a aposta de bota
it's slightly
fixa
different
através
for
do
Caixa because
através
we're
dos
not
jogos ali,
sportsbook
dos jogos
operators,
esportivos,
right? So
ele trouxe público mais jovem.
yes, it's a
Nós tínhamos
slightly
público mais
different audience.
tradicional,
So if you go to a
já
sportsbook
que
operator, it's probably
fazia as
a more
apostas na
younger
loteca.
public,
Então, eu
and
vejo que
we
tem sim
remain
impacto,
with the
mas
traditional
são impactos diferentes. Pra
lottery
gente hoje
audience,
tem
per
uma
se. So
atratividade
it
esse público
was,
mais jovem do que
there is
esse jogo mais
impact, there is
tradicional
changed
que era
our
feito da
offering,
Loteria Federal.
but not
Então a gente
so much our
recebeu já o
audience
impacto do
and
público
our
mais jovem,
player,
mas são
because
públicos diferentes, o
that
impacto
didn't
que veio
change
através
much.
da cota fixa.
So there is something to that. Yeah, because I wholeheartedly support what you said, and I think that's really important on a newly regulated market. You want to still make sure that you're catering to all your types of players, to younger demographics coming up, but the lotteries is, a key product, not even a product, a sector in all markets globally. And, you shouldn't lose sight of that. So I think what you said is really important. Earlier, you also mentioned the WLA, which is the World Lotteries Association, and they do a great job to be sure that lotteries also caters to their audience, but remains modernized, but without losing the raison d'etre. So, and new products, Brazil opening up the regulated market for commercial gaming, it's important that both are moving concurrently and both remain extremely relevant on the market and both remain well regulated, KYC, player protection, you have that high bar. So I really support what you say.
So, some summarizing questions to close out this panel discussion, thinking more generally about the industry and the competitive landscape. We've seen a small number of brands take up the bulk of the market share. Do you think that the podium positions are already taken, or is there some positions still up for grabs? What do you think, Hugo?
I think that the market will still have places for new entries. I think so, and the podium is not taken yet. I think that 2026 and next year we're gonna see a consolidation of the market. Of course, big brands, different brands will take a piece of the cake, but we're gonna see consolidation, maybe some acquisitions and something like that in that direction. But I still believe that the podium is not taken yet.
And what do you think, Charmaine?
We've seen many changes globally across markets, so anything can happen, to be honest. And I think I would take a neutral position on this, being a supplier, but there's always some consolidation. Might there be saturation in the market in years to come? These are all possibilities, but you're also dependent on mergers and acquisitions, which is not unique to Brazil. There are global trends. You're also dependent on what changes are happening in the regulatory space, how quick providers. So there's a lot of moving pieces. And listen, the market is only just over a year in, not even. So, lots has happened in a short space. So there's lots that can happen in my view.
Fantastic. Second question for Renato.
Love your question because, yes, that is very true. A lot of brands are there. It's a game. We don't know if the pole position is ready. But if someone can make the difference and grab that particular place, it's Caixa Loteria's
And my final question to each of you is, do you see scope for disruption in the market if there's still time?
Yeah. No. I think that I think that Brazil is on a good path, and we are in a good way.
And Charmaine?
I think we might. I think we're still too early to say a definite no. I think all of us still finding our feet, if you like, but there's always, it's an innovation is part of who we are. So there's always new products coming up and you want to be ahead of the game. I think there's scope for some disruption. I think so.
Not really. I think it's just going to be things related with the companies trying to fight for that better place in the market. But between the market itself, not really big disruptions. No.
Just completing my answer. I think that there's still Brazilians, they don't have this acknowledgement of gaming yet, as we don't have land-based. So I believe that in the near future, we're gonna see a culture of the players changing a lot. So in that way, I think that Brazil has a different way to go. As we're gonna improving, people are gonna learn more about gaming, learning about different verticals, learning about more how to play. So I can see something in that direction.
Hugo, Charmaine, Renato, Lily, thank you for joining me in this panel discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you for having.
Thank you very much.